I speak with someone who's able to charge his clients $50,000. Today, on episode 30 of Real Estate Photography Unlocked.
I'm just trying to get mine, but these agents got me losing my mind. Whatever happened to the good times? Man, forget about it. It's showtime. Let me show you how to get some rest, how to make millions, how to be your best. This is shout out to the REPs, to the shooters, producers, and the newbies. Welcome to our podcast. I'm your rep MC. We're here every week talking real estate photography.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Real Estate Photography Unlocked, episode 30. We're very happy to have you here. Today, I have a very special guest. Most of us run around pulling agents' teeth for a living, but some of us actually take the risk of looking beyond and seeking better clients. Today, I have one of those people who has transcended beyond regular real estate media and arrived to a different level. Please welcome with me, Stephen Caban. Thank you, Stephen, for joining us today on Real Estate Photography Unlocked. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me on. I can already hear the applause in the background. So thanks for the introduction.
Yeah, no problem at all. And you're fairly active in the photography and videography groups on Facebook. So if you guys want to interact with them, you can do it there. And do you have any Instagrams or Facebooks, websites that people can look at while we're talking here?
I do. I'm not super active. I am at, my Instagram is at Caban Stephen, I believe.
Okay, great.
Or Stephen Caban. And my business name is Full Bars Media. So I mainly post my work there every once in a while, but I'm definitely responsive. So if you want to shoot me a DM, more than happy to chat.
All right, awesome, man. That's very nice that you're open up to people. I appreciate that. And one of the main reasons I had you on is because I've always known about you, but you recently did a $50,000 project that I want to ask you all about. But before we dive into that, I want to ask, where were you before you started charging $50,000 for a project? I imagine that you had to start somewhere small. So where did you begin and how long have you been doing this? How did you get here?
Yeah, I definitely started small. I picked up a camera, a Sony A7, maybe about 8 years ago. I was actually in insurance and real estate myself, so I was brokering. And I mainly wanted to get into video for my own business because I knew that was going to be the future. And when I started contacting a few agencies, I started getting their quotes. And to me, they were astronomical quotes. I remember there was a business in Chicago called Indie Rap. And Indie Rap was doing kind of the high-end real estate video way before I was. And they gave me a quote of like $3,000 for a video. I thought it was astronomical. You know, I've been doing creative stuff my whole life. So I decided, why not just spend that $3,000 and pick up my own gear and do it myself? So that kind of kickstarted the whole journey into video production. And when I started doing stuff for myself, you know, people took notice. People I knew took notice, and they're like, "Hey, I kind of want you to do some of my videos." And you know, I was doing small projects, like a few pro bono projects for charities, a few, you know, for friends who are entrepreneurs who want like a $500 promo video. I was doing it for cheap, and I decided, you know, let me overproduce this. Let me see how high end I can go with this, and see if I can generate some more interest, which I did. Then I figured, hey, I can turn this into a full-time job. You know, I've been a creative my whole life, so now is finally an opportunity for me to be creative and start a real business with it. And, you know, I officially started Full Bars Media about 7 years ago.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And you've come a long way in 7 years. I haven't charged anyone $50,000. The most I've charged is like $11,000 for a larger project. And that isn't even for real estate. It's, you know, for something outside of real estate, more commercial, right?
Right.
Well, what are some lessons you learned in the early days? And like, what are some of the most important lessons? A lot of people that listen to this podcast aren't established professionals. They're kind of beginners. So what are some things that beginners really need to understand that you learned?
Oof. There's too many to really name. Let me start with a few. So you really need to come from a value oriented perspective and not necessarily cost oriented. You know, there was a book I read back when I was in insurance, running my insurance business with my family. It was called The Great Game of Business by Jack Stack. And one quote really stood out to me. He said, there's only two ways to excel at business. One is being the lowest cost producer, and the second is giving people an experience that they can't get anywhere else. Right. So I've always, from the get go, I've always wanted to have a differentiated product, a unique service, a high end service, and I took a lot of low end jobs, just as anyone should, and I still do to this day. I'm not saying that I'm above bringing my camera out for like $400 or so. I still do that actually. When it's convenient for me though, actually. But yeah, yeah. But I would say think of the value you're providing. I mean, when you are part of the real estate transaction, you need to realize that. So when I was working as a real estate agent, finding where the need is the most important thing, right? Because I don't want you to feel like I'm bad mouthing real estate agents in any way. I don't want us to sound that way, but like there are situations when real estate agents provide a lot of value a lot of times, and I'm not denying that, and it's great. But there are also situations that I heard from just hearing from consumers, just their feedback is they feel like, hey, I hired a realtor to take photos for me. I paid a realtor 13, 15 grand to take photos for me. And that was it, so, you need to realize the value that you bring to the table. And that was one of the biggest aha moments. And
I couldn't agree with you more there. And I actually feel like with the way that the industry is going, there's a lot of changes coming on. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a civil war in the not too distant future between media professionals taking over a little bit of the transaction for themselves and trying to be real estate agents. But I don't want to get you too off topic.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And the reason is because photographers are the only service provider that doesn't get paid by the client, the end user, the seller, the buyer, right? And why is that? And it makes sense, right? Because marketing and sales is a promise that the realtor makes to the client, so they should cover that. So most of the time, a realtor is reselling your service. They are brokering your service, not just brokering real estate, they're brokering your service. So that's another important point to realize. Loan officers, title companies, attorneys, inspectors, everyone that's part of a real estate transaction gets paid by the client. So imagine what your financials would look like. Imagine what a seller would pay if they're selling like an $800,000 home, and you gave them an example of like, hey, here you can spend $200 on photography, or you can get something way high end, which is going to get you more eyeballs. It's going to get more traffic to the door. They're gonna opt for the higher end photography every time because it's a very, everyone understands that visual language, right? People know great images when they see it. So they don't know what a good inspector is. They don't know what a good loan officer is most of the time, but they could tell great images from crap.
You bring up an excellent point. In fact, it's too bad that more homeowners aren't involved in the process of choosing a photographer. Because I do think it'd pay a lot more. Real estate agents really, once again, not trying to badmouth them, but them's the facts. Real estate agents will try to spend as little as they possibly can, I find, in many cases, most cases. There are real estate agents that are willing to pay more, and clearly you know how to find those and make sure you provide that experience you're talking about. But I agree with you completely, and it's very interesting. So you've started your business, and you clearly have lots of experience and you're seeing both sides of the coin here from your work experience. What made you want to decide to try something more high end? So clearly you had two options: do the volume or do an experience that they've never experienced before. So, and what does your model look like today? So you do a little bit of cheaper stuff, but clearly you go for the high-end stuff whenever you can. And what market are you in, by the way? Do you think this will work in every market, or do you have to be in a specific type of market? Just speak to all of that.
Yeah, it works in every market. I mean, nowadays I'm traveling for jobs even more now too. So I've done projects in Florida twice this year, potentially a third. I think an Alabama one just popped up. I did the New York one as well. Um, so as long as you're providing, you're matching that value with the right service, it's very easy to add your travel expenses as a line item on a proposal on an invoice. I mean,
Mhm.
large real estate companies have no problem paying, $2,000 to fly you out and stay at a hotel nearby. So, I think if you want to go high end, it starts to open up, more opportunities to travel, which I think is one of the more fun parts of the business. But to your earlier question, yeah, I've always wanted to go high end, right?
Yeah.
But it depends on your personality, right? Some people just they like the grind. They like the moving the widgets down the conveyor belt. They love managing people. They love gobbling up market share and doing tons and tons of shoots. And I have nothing, against that. I have mentors myself. I have people that I look up to in the industry, who've created these big agencies with tons of employees. I've tried it. I had my own storefront studio. I've had photographers, W-2 employees, editors on retainer. And, to me, I lost a little bit of the passion that I had for, the reason why I got into this business was to really challenge myself creatively. And the reason why most clients come to me is for my own creative output. So now I've had to pivot my entire business model a few years ago, um, only because it just works for me personally. I'm not saying one business model is better than the other. When I jump on coaching calls with photographers and videographers, I'm not trying to convince them of my ways. Like that's I challenge them. I challenge their reasons for wanting to get into this, because there's going to be situations where if you decide to get into more high end videography work, there's going to be situations where it does not pay better. It does not pay better than doing the volume stuff.
Right.
So you have to kind of get over the hill, put the extra effort, take the extra risks to get over that hill to generate highly profitable opportunities. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes perfect sense, and I agree with you
Mhm.
completely. Where there's no best business model, I think there's a best fitting business model for the operator. I know that I have my own strengths and weaknesses. For example, I'm a very autonomous person where I teach myself a lot, a whole lot, and I naturally expect my employees and stuff to kind of I'll introduce them to a problem, show them an example of how I want it, but I have found, man, employees really, you have to kind of babysit them and hold them by the hand every step of the way. And it's the same thing with customers lots of times too. Even with other photographers, when they sign up for Real Estate Media Hero, I'm expecting them to like, man, want to dive in and save all that money for themselves. But oftentimes we have to follow up with them like 10 times before they actually
Yeah.
start getting into it. And then once they get into it, they're happy about it. But yeah, so certain strengths and certain weaknesses with people. All right, so take us through the transition of doing small time stuff and what you did previously to starting to go after some of those bigger fish. And did it go super smoothly? Was it a complete disaster? Did how did it work itself out?
Yeah. So the learning curve is definitely, it could have been quicker. Because initially, and I think a lot of creatives fall into this trap that, the only thing that matters is your quality of work. And that's oftentimes not the case. I think you really need to understand the whole real estate ecosystem, the way money moves, which properties are newer and have vacancies or lease ups or are selling out, and how they're doing. So, I think step one is recognizing the opportunity, and two is figuring out what value you can provide to that opportunity, right? So I did a project. This is another high budget project that we're talking about, $32,000 video. A lot of people come to me, asking me, how do I justify, those kind of prices? Then I explained to them, like, look, this is a new luxury apartment building. There's, say, 150 vacancies, right? They're charging $3,000 a month. They're losing 450 grand a month on that property. So
Yeah.
when you deliver an asset to a company that's going to go on their website, and it's going to be the first thing that people see on their website, for a website that gets 7,000-8,000 visitors a month, if you can move the needle just slightly, just say 1%, you can help convert 1% of those visitors into leads. Well, what does 80 new prospective renters look like, right?
Right.
What does that look like financially for a building?
And even if they got one tenant, then
Right.
that one tenant would pay it back over a few months.
Oh yeah.
And it's very important to crunch those numbers. I worked with a commercial photographer one time, and he shot a single image. I think it was like for I forget the number, $9,000 or $11,000, just one image for that. And I asked, man, how did you justify that price? He's like, well, Jonathan, when I was talking to them on the phone, I asked them about licensing and how many times they needed this image to be reproduced. And they were reproducing the image around 500,000 times in print and magazines and billboards across the country. So he asked me a question, Jonathan, how much do you think they spent on advertising space for this image? The answer is millions.
Right.
Millions of dollars for that. And I would love to talk to you more about, we're going to break down your invoice in a second, but also, do you do any work outside of real estate for commercial stuff? Or is it mostly architecture and real estate related?
Every once in a while, I'll step outside to do something a little different, like a small commercial film for another business I've done. I still do that. Podcasts I still shoot, mainly because podcasts are a great way to network and meet people. That's what I found, because if you're daring enough to get in front of a camera and microphone and you have something to say about your business, you're someone that's worth knowing, to me at least.
Thank you.
So yeah. Yeah. So, and I go, obviously that goes to you as well. But so the first time I started increasing my prices kind of in a big way, I felt good about it, right? But when I started to your point, when I started to figure out what they were using those images for, I almost regret not charging more. I remember one time I charged a condo building. They wanted a really good exterior photo. So I'm like, oh yeah, I can get you a really good high-end exterior photo for $2,000. They paid it. It was great. They loved it. Everyone was impressed with the image. And then I start seeing billboards with my image on there. Then I start seeing digital ads with my image on there. Then I started seeing newsletters and press releases with my image on there. So, could I have charged more? Yeah. I mean, but seeing your work on the stage for the first time is kind of one of those big aha moments. When you start to crunch the numbers, like you said, and realize, like, hey, how far does your image really, really go, and how much work is it doing? That's important. So I did another time I increased my price, and the first time I really started doing architectural photography, as we say, is for a stone manufacturing company. And I charged $4,000 as a day rate to do exteriors at 4 locations. And I thought I made out like a bandit. But lo and behold, they're using those images for big advertising campaigns. They're using that as the cover page for a big commercial, facade campaign throughout the country. So, there's always, I am not that experienced on licensing. I still don't sell it often enough. I'm trying to get more into it. I know that when you shoot a property, there's so many manufacturers and parties to that kind of build out, appliance companies, stone manufacturers, cabinets, countertops, all sorts of stuff.
Right.
Sometimes the product's invisible. Like I did an InvisiCook shoot. InvisiCook is that, induction cooktop that goes underneath the countertop and you don't even see it.
I have no idea. That's interesting.
Yeah. but yeah, anyways, I think that that point couldn't be more
Right.
emphasized. And I think when more photographers start to challenge themselves in that way, and stop doing the like breaking it down from a services standpoint, like, oh well, I charge realtors 300 for a drone, so if another company asks me for drone work, then it's the same price because it's the same service, and that'll kill you. That
Yeah.
attitude is going to leave so much money on the table.
And
um,
unfortunately, the way we teach real estate photography right now in the industry is incredibly self-damaging to our entire industry, because everybody says, "Hey, don't even think about your image rights. Don't even think about your value. Just get the client. Do whatever you got to say. Do whatever you got to do to just get the client."
yeah.
Because, and rather than do that, you guys just need to learn to have a better tone and the right word choice to retain your value and leverage in the situation, so that you can charge stuff like this. Now, I want to talk to you about your $2,000 image and your $50,000 invoice, and we're going to cover that next.
Mhm.
But I
Yeah.
also had another question for you. You were talking about how you are getting jobs in New York, Alabama, Florida, all across the country. How are people finding out about you primarily? Did you get a major client and he told all his major client rich friends, or are you doing something on purpose, either Instagram ads or some type of marketing campaign? How are you getting national recognition?
It comes from all areas. To be completely honest with you, I wish there was a simple lever that I can pull to make
Mm.
opportunities happen, but they really come from everywhere. Sometimes they come from referrals from other photographers who see my stuff. They want to partner up, and that's a great opportunity. A few months ago I met a photographer out in Texas who was working with a new development, luxury development, and they wanted view shots. The building is not even complete yet, and he calls me up and he's like, "Oh, they want drone photos. What should I charge for this?" I typically charge 1,500 or so. Like, what would I? I'm like, you know what? You can charge $8,000 for this, easy. And he's like, what? So yeah, just get me on the phone. We'll have that Zoom call together. It's a partnership. My company, your company, and I'll talk to them. We'll figure out what they need. So it turns out they need view shots from every single floor plan in the entire building. So once I listen and I explain the problem and how we're going to solve it, then that $8,000, $7,000 invoice starts to look a lot more reasonable, right?
Mm.
So I got him that job at at I think $8,000. I took my 20% commission, and he went off to the races and was very happy with that. And he ended up making more, 3 times more money just partnering with me, just on the pitch, on the sale.
Right.
And it's the same situation in Alabama. Another photographer hit me up. It's like, I know you do that cinematic style brand video, and I want to pitch that to a developer. So we did the same thing. We got together. It was a partnership, my company, his company, and got the client really excited about doing a brand video. And hopefully that deal closes pretty soon here. But that's one way. So I wanted to bring that up first because I think collaboration is kind of key in the industry, and it's one thing I've been
Mm.
realizing more and more is that when you let your ego get in the way and you start pretending like you're the only you're the only shop in town, um, you're making things harder on yourself, right? And this is an important point because my competitors in the space, when I lose a job on price, and sometimes I lose a job, sometimes I'll quote $10,000 to $15,000 for a brand video for a development, and I'll lose it because a combination of not following up, or there's another videographer in town who's doing it for $2,500.
Mm.
And it happened to me very recently.
And what town
And
are you in, by the way?
I'm in Chicago,
Okay. Okay.
right? So I'll call that videographer and I'll say like, hey, I really like your work. Just wanted to let you know that you should be charging more for it because you deserve it. Personally, I would have closed this client for 10,000, 15,000, and I think you could too. So next time an opportunity comes up, I'm not going to try to steal it from you. Like let's figure out how to get the value up because the money's there. You know what I'm saying? Like if you want to be Mr. Nice Guy, like charge $10,000 and donate 7,000 to charity, to children's charity. Because right
Yeah,
now you're putting,
I couldn't agree with that more, by the way.
yeah.
Couldn't agree with that more. Hey, let me ask you a question. When you call up a photographer and give him that kind of advice unwarranted, how does that call usually go? Because I have actually done the same thing, but I haven't done it in years because I got so tired of the local competition being so defensive and insecure. Like the
Mhm.
phone calls were always very unpleasant, no matter how nice tried to be. For example, we had, and he's out of business now, but I called a guy and asked him, "Hey, man, so I noticed you just include free drone in all of your services, and it's not like you're including the drone price in the package. You're really just giving it away for free. Um,
Mhm.
like drones cost money, they get wrecked. We have to have insurance. We got to have Part 107. Maybe you don't work with a Part 107, whatever. That's not my business. But you could easily charge $100 add-on without them thinking twice about this."
Mhm.
Um, and he just told me to mind my own business, gave me a few curse words. And oh, he said specifically, "Yeah, I don't do that because I don't like effing people." Right. And that's how the call went. And that's how most phone calls go. So I've just honestly stopped bothering with my local competition because they're all just so ego driven and everything else. Um,
Well, to your point, VHT recently closed, and VHT was an Illinois-based, shop, and they were all over. They had all of Compass's business first of all, at Properties, another big brokerage here. They're pretty much, ubiquitous in the space, and I knew that they were at the prices that they were charging. The fact that so many agents get free shoots, even like I've talked to Compass agents who are like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm good. I get free photos." Um, you know, where are you supposed to go from there? Like, VHT was a venture capital backed company. They were owned by Matterport, who was owned by CoStar. So I know that they're probably not making any money at all. They're probably operating at a loss. They're being subsidized by this much larger company. And I think it was the best thing that happened to the industry that they went out of business because, like, look, this isn't right. Tech companies are trying to, they're funding, even they're taking losses in order to become disruptive in the industry. They want to provide all the value to the end user, get rid of agents, get rid of photographers, make everything automated, make everything high margin for themselves. And, you know, a lot of I wonder what those photographers are going to do now once they start to go out and have to get their own business and it's not just automatic anymore and they have to sell their value and it can't just be price oriented because the only reason they use you was for price.
yeah,
Where do you go from there? Because
yeah,
a living wage, you can't make a living wage doing $60 free-ish shoots all day.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I have mentored some people who have worked for VHT or other companies, and they really just are robbed. They're so used to being an employee and being a cog in the system, they have no idea how to actually pioneer a new business. And I see such a lack of effort on their end. Usually, for example, they won't even show up for the mentorship that they paid for, and that's
Yeah.
that's just a really bad sign that they're not going to do the things they need to do to succeed. All right, so let's go ahead then and get
But
to
I think, but before we move on,
yeah,
I
yeah,
think you bring up a really important point. There is, you know, you see this negativity especially in the Facebook groups for whatever reason that
man, yeah, they can't
people
be.
want they want to bring the value down of each other's work. Like, and it does, and that's kind of like what needs to be broken.
Mhm.
Um, is this idea, we should be doing the opposite. We should be saying, hey, you should be charging more. Your value is here even if the work isn't quite there. Like, here's some pointers. Bring the value. A rising tide lifts all boats. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
Volume chasing, it's not so, I have a friend who does volume. He does 300 shoots a month, and we have those conversations every couple of months. Like, what are you doing?
And there's no reason you can't do both, by the way, because
Right.
there's people out there who need cheaper images, but there's also no reason. One of the things I live by, I have a huge note in my phone of just sayings, thoughts, quotes, and one of them is, "Why not both?" There's no
Mhm.
reason why you can't do a lot of volume and charge a lot for it. There's a lot of real estate photographers out there who do, 200 or 300 shoots a month, and their average order values 800, $1,400.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
so
I was under contract by a photography agency out of Miami. They were called Lifestyle Production Group, and they charged a pretty penny for their photography video service. I think $2,500 was the typical invoice for photos and videos of like those big villas in South Florida. Um, and I took a good look at the business model and realized that it really wasn't for me. I was under contract. I had earnest money on the table. I lost 26 grand, I think, when I pulled out of the deal. Mainly because if I wanted that business model, I kind of would have pursued it, and I feel like it just wasn't a fit. It wasn't a match for me.
mm,
Um, and it would become a grind. And you know, don't get me wrong, like that's still a fantastic business for a lot of people. Just wasn't a fit for me and what I love to do.
understood.
And I knew that it would consume 110% of my life if I went forward with that transaction. So my point is that the money in commercial real estate is there, okay? Because you have to know who you are selling to, right? You can't spell broker without broke, right? Most brokers do not have the money to spend on high end marketing. Okay.
I'm going to live by that now, dude.
Yeah.
I cannot. That's going in my phone. You can't spell broke without broke. That
Right.
is so true, man.
Right. Right.
Um,
And it's not to, I don't want, that's not to like denigrate brokers at all, because it's a simple math equation, right? You're making 2% of a home's value, right? So the person making the 98% of the home's value, he should be paying for the media. And he can be paying 50 times more and afford to pay 50 times more for media than the broker can, right? So
you're
when you're
bringing out
selling, when you're,
I
yeah,
love this. You're bringing out such great perspective and different ways of looking at this. Like,
yeah. So when you're selling to a stakeholder, like a developer, a real estate investment trust, like the actual ownership of the property of a condo building, like you have to know who you're selling to, because it's not my drone video on my menu is $300. So 300, there's too much at stake for them, you know? And the opportunities that I win where I have competitors who are priced much lower than me is like, these clients are not price sensitive. As a matter of fact, they to give them a low price, they get anxiety. They're like, this is too cheap. This is not this is not going to get us the results we need. They'll default to the highest price offer, right? So I think that's the biggest mindset shift that a lot of videographers, photographers need to take when they start doing shifting from doing realtor work to commercial real estate work, right?
I'm continuing to think of more questions. I have a list of questions I want to ask you, but I'm coming up with some of these on the spot because they're just related to what you're asking. How come, for example, you're talking about lower priced photographers who don't win the job? How come some people are spending extra few $1,000s to fly you out when they have plenty of local real estate photographers that could probably do the job? Um, why? What can you tell photographers across the country to help them win these jobs from the people who are in their own town?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to your proposal and how you position yourself, how you position your brand, right? Um, I am a results oriented, uh, you know, uh, provider. right? So when I jump on a consultation call, I approach the whole project holistically, right? So it's not a conversation about photos. It's how to sell out a new condo building. It's how to lease up a new apartment building, right? And there's a strategy behind that. What kinds of images do you need? Do you need lifestyle images? Do you need architectural style images? Do you need interior design style images? Maybe we should get some models to activate these spaces, right? What kind of clients are nearby? Is it by who's the main employer in town? Is there a hospital nearby, and you anticipate a lot of nurses and doctors living here? There's a whole picture that you have to paint there with the client, and the more you can paint it, the more unique your offer is, right? And the issue I think with a lot of providers is that they don't want they maybe they have too much anxiety to jump on a conference call with a CEO and a marketing director and ask prying questions and really challenge those clients into saying like, hey, someone lands on your website, then what? Okay, don't you think you would get more interest if we had a lifestyle video, if we did a video featuring the neighborhood, if we had images that really captured a day in the life, lifestyle images? Do you need video backgrounds for your website? Do you need ads? Do you need social media reels? Are you planning on running advertising? Do you want me to put together a package of footage that brokers can download and use on their own social media? That way you have an army of agents cross-promoting your new property here. So you're starting to deliver a much, much greater thinking and strategy behind their media needs rather than just like, okay, you want photos? I got that. You want drone? I got that. You want Matterport? I got that. Mm-hmm. So, when you get creative with a client on that initial call, you're creating a baby with that client, right? If you ask them questions and you listen to their creative ideas, like, oh yeah, I think we really need to capture the sunset and blah, 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 blah. You're creating a baby with that. And when I say by creating a baby is that they're not going to just walk away. We're like, hey, we got a baby together. We have this unique creative idea that you co-authored with me. So now it's just not a simple matter of like who's cheaper and who's giving me this and that, right? I get it. I understand it. I know what the end goal is, and they trust me to see it through to the end and not come up with excuses, not nickel and dime them, not rush the project, deliver a low end project. There's a lot of the little things that give people more confidence to use you as a partner, right? Not just as a vendor, not just as a service provider, but as a true partner in this mission here.
You've already inspired me to go after larger clients. And with that, let's go ahead and break down, if you don't mind, your $50,000 invoice, so we can better understand it. And then I'll have some follow-up questions for you regarding that. So you recently did a project that was $50,000, and you shared that in the Facebook group. So if you guys want to check that out, can you break it down? How come you charge $50,000 for this? What did it involve? Where do the costs come from? If you don't mind sharing what your actual profit was after it's all said and done, that would be incredibly helpful to everybody.
Right. So before you start building out an invoice like that, you need to have an understanding between you and the client, like what the vision is, right? Because you as an expert, you need to provide the roadmap to realize the vision, right? So you don't spit out prices without a shared vision in place. I don't. Sometimes there's a situation right now where a property manager wants me to produce a quote. We haven't had a Zoom call. They haven't introduced me to the stakeholder, to the client, but they just want that price. They want to shoot it over. So now my job is to make that invoice, that proposal, as enticing as possible. And we can talk more about visual proposals because I think it's important. But once we have a vision of that project, then I start to list the ingredients that goes into that vision. All right. So once we've agreed, like, hey, we want this vision, we have a storyboard here, we want characters activating these spaces, we want models in the pool amenities, we want a mother and her child in the game room, the kids' playroom. We want drone footage. We want dramatic drone footage. We want, city shots. I have a list of ingredients. I'm going to put all those ingredients in the proposal, and I'm going to say, hey, if we want everything that's included in this vision, it's going to take X amount of days. And the more we capture, the more we need to edit. So I'm going to make it very easy for you. I'm just going to quote you as a day rate of $6,500 for video production. And that covers everything from the pre-production, the planning, the capture, my crew, and the editing for a day's worth of work. But since we have so much stuff here that we want to do, and we're so ambitious with this project, it's going to be five production days. So 6,500 times 5, whatever it may be. The drone I quote separately because I'm going to have to hire a drone operator out in New York, and we're going to get a really nice drone, and we're going to do a lot of editing on that drone footage. So that might be another $5,000-$6,000 line item, right? And then we need to do photography. So whatever my architectural photography day rate is for my best quality work, whether it's $3,500 or $4,000 a day, which gets you 25, 30 images a day, fully edited, 2 days, 3 days, we need actors. And a typical actor is going to be $1,500 per actor. We need a bill for that. Right. My travel expenses, there's a hotel nearby. I've already got a quote. This is what's going to cost for me to get there and spend, 7-8 days there. So you start assembling your invoice, your quote that way, in a way that makes sense. But to my earlier point, sometimes it just doesn't even need to make sense if you're selling to the right person. If the person is the key decision maker and they're not price sensitive at all. I had a call with a client, and this is another key point to make, is that sometimes you think you're being the nice guy, the good guy, by trying to save the client money. Like, I think if we, reduce the expenditures here and there, then we can, save some money. And then sometimes the client snaps back and they're like, we have money. We have money. Like, why are you wasting your time trying to save us money? You're supposed to be working on the best video you could possibly make. Like, what are you doing? We didn't ask you for all this stuff. Like,
I had a great coworker back before I owned my own business 15 or 20 years ago. His name was Basilio, and I am one of those, trying to be a good guy type of salesman. I'm always trying to help save people money. And he would always come to me like, bro, that's not your job. That's their job. Like, let them save themselves money. If they want to pay a 20% loan, let them pay a 20% loan. That's not your business. And I didn't feel comfortable with that at the time, but as long as they've been informed, they're an informed consumer.
Yeah.
And they're not pressured overly, just beaten into saying yes, then it is their decision. It's a free world, and if that's their choice. All right. So thank you for breaking that down for us. It's been said sometimes that the difference between a $5,000 invoice and a $50,000 invoice is $45,000. What do you say to that?
I have a question. Like, does it mean that it's the same service? Or
sometimes, is it? Yeah, sometimes that's kind of what it's inferring there.
No, I don't think that's 100% true. Actually, there are instances where that's true. Like I said earlier, like where you're anchoring your price is important because people will default to the higher price option. Like if I said, hey, Jonathan, I'm going to give you a gift. You can either have the $10,000 car or you can have the $95,000 car. Which one do you want?
I'll take the $95,000 car as long as it's an old Turbo S or a Nissan GTR. But I don't mess around with.
Right. But you just want the more expensive product. You don't care what it is.
Yeah,
right? It could be a bicycle. It could be a bicycle.
Right.
And you just want the more expensive. So the importance of coming in high is that you can always subtract. Mm-hmm. And the importance of, having a complex invoice and proposal is that if there's if there's any pushback on price, which sometimes it's a token pushback, sometimes, you know, you just need to give them a win just to get to yes. So you quote here, you know, you're going to end up here because the feeling that the buyer gets when they get a discount is a great feeling. And there's a whole ton of buyer psychology stuff that you can learn, but it applies here as well, right?
Okay.
I will get, you know, like if there's a competitor who's offering 30,000 and I'm at, you know, 40,000, you know, and they tell me, hey, we have a hard budget stop at 30,000. I'm like, cool. Well, here I can take this off the table and it'll pretty much give you the same product. I'll sharpen the pencil a little bit on here. You know, you never split the difference, but at least you have an opportunity to kind of like take, you know, and they'll always choose the higher price proposal that they can get a discount on.
Right.
You know, that's just the way, rather than the person that comes in way too low. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And
Right.
Obviously you come with an incredible wealth of knowledge from your previous careers, because I don't think you've learned all of this in the last 7 years, right?
Right.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So how important would you say like skill in photography and creative is versus sales and doing higher end work? Could you do what you do, let's say with like an iPhone, if you were a good enough salesperson and had strong editing, or does it require, you know, top end gear, the latest and greatest type of editing, also mastery of traditional cinematography and traditional editing, pacing, that sort of
Yeah.
thing, or
Yeah.
is it mostly sales and business acumen?
Yeah, it really depends. Well, it's both. You need both. You need
Okay.
both high-end product and you
So
need
you
sales
can't do what you're
skills.
doing with an iPhone.
You can. I mean, it's not going to look. Let me say this.
Right.
What is your brand? What's the client? What are they excited about? Maybe you're such a badass editor and you're doing all the, you know, blowing up houses and shit with AI and you're doing all that cool stuff, and that's your brand and that's what you're selling. Then you can shoot your stuff on an iPhone in that instance, right? But I am selling a cinematic uh, imagery, scenes that I'm lighting, scenes that I'm directing. That, you know, we have some production design. My wife does some production design on our shoots where she'll do like the food, the staging, the props, and stuff like that. So, you know, we're activating these spaces, and that's my brand. That's what I'm selling. That's unique to these clients. And, you know, I didn't shoot on an expensive camera for my recent project. I shot on a Lumix S1R2, which is a $3,000 camera. I knew that it was more than capable, but I've done shoots on red cinema cameras. I've done, you know, Black Magic and so on. I'll say this: most of my clients are not on set. They don't really care what I'm doing, what lights I'm using, what camera I'm using. They don't care.
And if you told them, would they know at all?
They wouldn't know.
They
They
have no
wouldn't
clue.
know.
Okay.
But there is something to be said for if you're on set with the clients and you know they're going to be there, then putting that big matte box on the camera and having a client monitor and the lighting is gonna help you sell your value, you know, 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So you got to be aware of that as well. But yeah, if you want to do an iPhone, if you want to do I personally think saying that I'm going to come out with an iPhone is going to dramatically reduce my billable at the end of the day, because there's just no value attached to that. Like if the client expectation is you're going to bring in some great equipment, bring some great equipment, rent it.
Right.
You know, doesn't mean you have to go out and buy you know, whatever, a Hasselblad or whatever the hell it is. Just, you know, like figure out how to get it done. You know, like for the longest time I was renting my tilt shift lenses, my Canon tilt shift lenses. I didn't buy them until much later, but if the project was big enough, I'll go out and rent the stuff that I need. And I'll add it to the invoice too. I'm going to say like, hey, I'm using high-end equipment here, so you're going to want to pay my price.
We've talked a lot about business. Let's go ahead and start talking a little bit more about creative. And I do talk about business a lot. Let's talk gear and production. Are you more of a full set with an entire crew kind of guy, or do you actually like to operate as simple as possible and you've already mentioned that you have crews and stuff, but is that only when you need them? Like only when you need them, or do you try to work those in when you can?
That's a good question. When I started, I always took a traditional filmmaking approach, and I would act as the producer on set. There have been many shoots where I was not operating the camera at all. I'd hire a DP. I would hire, a guy who would do grip gaffer type stuff, where they would, set up the dolly track and the lighting and audio stuff like that. Get a separate, recordist on set as well. Um, Makeup person. I used to do traditional filmmaking setups, and then what I realized is that once you get really good at that, even if you're not really good at that, but once you know the workflow, you know what you can subtract and how you can get leaner and save more money, right? So I've actually gone in the reverse. I've gone into really doing full productions with a crew, down to me with a camera and a single 800-watt bicolor light fixture to give me light when I need it, and some simple production design, no makeup. I'm not really doing close-ups of people, so usually the actors come to me like, "Oh, is there going to be hair and makeup on set?" And I say, not really, because we're not really doing close-ups. So we're shooting spaces, right?
Right.
And I can shoot. I shot that entire lifestyle video that you referenced, the one in New York. All the lifestyle sequences were shot on a 25 millimeter lens. I think for one shot I might have used a different lens, and the reason I like that lens is because it's wide, but it's close enough, to tell the story. So we're selling spaces, right? So I can do a close up on a 25, I can do a wide on a 25, and the continuity between the shots helps the viewer understand where he is in the space, right? Because I think if you get too carried off in like the narrative filmmaking style of doing things, you miss the real estate, right? So what I describe my stuff as now is like most of the stuff I'm doing isn't really filmmaking. It's actually what I would describe as like videography plus, because videography, you're just shooting what's there. Cinematography is you're controlling what's there, right? You're controlling the lighting, you're controlling the action, and all these different factors. But, in these little condo units and amenity spaces, you're not going to be setting up sophisticated lighting, systems like you would in a narrative film. So,
right.
I would say to answer your question, I would say the simpler you can make it, the better.
I agree. I definitely agree with that. I do like to make it simpler. There's no reason why you can't charge and have it as simple as possible.
Yeah.
I know that I do much better work when my entire process is simple. In fact, the more other people get involved, the more variables that are involved, I know for a fact more things go wrong.
Yeah. And there's going to be shots that are going to get thrown out by the client too. So, and I've been in situations where I worked so hard for this shot, and then they're like, "Nah, we don't need that," cut it out. So I know, and a shoot like this where we're doing lifestyle capture for like 3 days, 4 days, maybe. There's a shot where the guy dives under the swimming pool, right? It's an underwater shot. I didn't shoot that underwater shot. That's a stock clip. I could have gone and got an underwater housing for my camera and light that and get my swimming trunks and burn many hours and then also have to edit that footage. But you have to pick and choose your battles here, right?
Yeah.
So I know that for this client, at least, the more coverage, the better, because they're going to want to get into the weeds and say, move this clip. I want a clip of that space, blah, blah, blah. And they're going to be upset if I say that I don't have the shot. So sometimes I actually pitch that client on a more like a commercial film style, where it's a little bit more narrative with voiceover. There's 2 main actors and we have some, a cool storyboard. They didn't like that. They threw that out. They just said, look, do what you did on the last project. And what I did on the last project was just a lot of videography capture. Mm-hmm. And that's what I call it. I call it videography plus. I'm like, you're doing everything you do in a regular real estate video shoot, but now you're adding that extra sauce of lifestyle sequences, some continuity, a little bit of a story, props, models, that sort of thing.
And Could you break down as well? This is something I'm interested in specifically. When you're taking, you mentioned that you did an exterior shot that was around $2,000. What does the creative process look like that for that? What is the equipment involved? Are you using tilt shift lenses? Are you using drones? Are you lighting the subjects? Are you doing it at night or during the day or specific times of day? Post processing, are you doing this with luminosity masks yourself and taking multiple exposures? Are you doing some type of flash mixture or drone painting with light? There's all sorts of ways you can do this. Or is it more simple that you're just composing a great shot, doing a little bit of edits, and charging $2,000 for it?
Yeah. So to my earlier point, it's really what is that asset going to be used for, right? And what best serves that purpose, right? Some client, I've done the twilight sunrise shot for the one exterior that I did that was on the lake. I had an agreement with the client. I said, I think this building would look best because it's on the lake, that we get it at sunrise, Lake Michigan, sunrise, like we get the reflection of the sun just as it's breaking the horizon. And that's the shot, colorful sky, nice deep oranges and all that sunlight and all that jazz. And they signed off on it. So in that case, I can just go down at 5:30 a.m. with my drone pilot and say, like, hey, go to the midsection of the building, orbit around at 90 degrees and just get those shots. I'm going to choose the best composition. I'm going to do whatever I need to do in the edit to make sure it looks nice and snazzy. I'll do a sky replacement. I'll do a luminosity mask to make sure that we have detail spread all across the histogram there. And it's retouching all the little blemishes and stuff like that. And sometimes the job can be that simple, but some clients, they specifically tell me, we want a lot of photos. We want a lot of photos to choose from. We're expecting you to deliver a lot of great photos. And in that case, it's me walking around with a zoom lens and just getting a lot of different angles and a lot of different context in the city. And, it's, you have to, I think so many people are fixated on this is my way of doing things. This is my rate card. This is, I haven't broken down X, Y, Z, and that's great. But it's also limiting in the sense that you don't get to have that creative synergy with the client there, because once you have that, they're going to be loyal to you. They're going to come back for that every single time. So if you can bend a little and you can have that conversation, you can say like, hey, you know what? I listened to you. You listened to me. Here's the plan, and here's what I can charge to get that executed. As long as you're on the same page, nothing can go wrong. Nothing. Like you're not going to have. It's impossible to have an angry client because they signed off on exactly what you said you were going to do, right?
And I'm probably going to put this question at the very beginning of the podcast because I think it's the most relevant question that people really need to understand. Hearing all this advice, a lot of people are going to be like, yeah, Steven, cool story, bro. There's no way I can do that in my market. So you can take all of your advice and live your dream in Chicago and charge those prices. It ain't happening here. What would you say to that photographer?
You need to really dive into your local real estate market and understand how the money's moving, right? So, and you need to approach it as like an actual practitioner of real estate, not just a photographer looking for, his next gig, but like, where's the money moving to? Even if it's like there's small towns that are building apartment developments, townhome developments, town centers, right? And those companies, there's a lot of funding that's required to build those properties. There's a lot of money flowing through to the GCs and the architects.
And they're not based in your town. They're based in bigger towns. Yeah.
Well, you send an email, you make a phone call, right? You do
No, I mean, so they're not having that small town mindset. They're coming from bigger cities and are willing to pay more money.
No, I mean, what I would say is there's so many different most photographers in this industry, their main goal is to get to yes, right? And if you're always trying to get to yes and you don't have a plan for getting to no, you're never going to know what you're capable of, right? Because me personally in my business, I need to hear no enough times to know that I'm pricing myself right. Because if you're hearing yes to every quote, every proposal, you're just not charging enough.
Right.
You're just not. That's bad. If someone said like, "Oh, that's a fantastic price," I'm like, "Wait a second, that's not what I was expecting to hear." You know what I'm saying? Like even on very high priced jobs, I get very instant responses like, "Oh, 25 grand, great. I'm like, wait a second, this is supposed to be harder."
Right.
Um, you have to embrace that dance, that dance of negotiating, of demonstrating your value. You have to embrace that, right?
Mhm.
and
Okay.
and seek it out. But a lot of providers just want to get to yes. They just want to be priced at a point where it's like it's got to be automatic. They have to look at the price on the website and book a shoot and just say yes and not have an issue with it. And if you want to run your business that way, it's not a bad way to run your business. I'm just saying, like,
It can be.
you can't have both. You just can't have both. Like you
Yeah,
can't be the guy that has standard, super enticing pricing and also be the guy that does high-end work. It's just a
Right.
completely different workflow.
Let's just, if you don't mind, we're already at an hour.
Yeah.
Is it okay if we keep going?
Yeah, I just have a call at in 20 minutes. So
Okay, all right. Well, we'll try to get these next ones in 20 minutes. Okay, so all of this is about how people can make more money here, and this is going to be lots of higher value. So, do you think real estate photographers are undercharging, and what are some of the best ways real estate photographers can make more money?
yeah. Um, it really depends on, this comes back to the classic volume versus quality conversation, right? And I'm not an expert on making the most amount of money with realtors. I'll tell you my experience and I can tell you what I've learned. And I've had realtors on retainer. I've had the number one real estate agent in Chicago, Laracy Group, on retainer for a few years for $10,000 a month. And I can speak to why it's it's tough to balance the egos of all these different clients and scale a business based on a differentiated product. And what I found is that quoting a high price and being out of reach for a lot of agents, to me, is the best way to make more money and have more peace of mind and have more time to spend with the family and go out and hiking and exploring and doing my hobbies and the things I love to do. If you want to just shoot houses, if you want to shoot 4 homes every day of the month, you do you. You do you. You're going to make a lot of money, and you're going to deservedly so. But I don't want to. I personally don't want to do that.
It
Right?
comes at the cost of your personal
Right.
life.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do you want to do? Like, there's guys out there, a lot of guys that do great work that I respect in the groups, and they kill it. They just are out there shooting every single day, and they make a lot of money. And it's
I don't know.
I don't. Yeah.
I've talked to some of these kind of people, and I think there is an underlying truth because I got my business started, and I, wanted to make a name for myself. Not really make a name for myself, but make my own way in the world. Because I dropped out of college, and I wasn't even sure. None of my family members had ever run a business before, and everyone in my own family was thinking I was making a huge mistake. So I just wanted to see if it was possible, right? So after I saw that it was possible, and I did it for a long time, I started realizing that, having all the money and all the success isn't exactly worth it. You've got to make sure that once you have it, develop it into something that's worth living with and
Right.
for. And so I really admire your business approach, your work-life balance style, all of that is just uh, incredible, and more people should recognize that. And in order for us to get to that point, folks, we've got to stop undercharging
Yeah.
and giving away
Yeah. No, I mean, it's, like
everything.
yeah, I mean, there's another example is I had an agent reach out. There's a 4-unit condo building. They wanted some photos, a video, the Matterport. And I quoted them $800. I thought it was a steal, and they thought it was a steal too. They're like, "Oh, great, yeah, let's do this next week." And then he ghosted on me, and I reached out, and his response was, "Yeah, I found someone who's substantially cheaper than you." Okay, and he said the word substantially, so I'm like, okay, so what are you being charged? Like $400 for photo, video, Matterport, blah blah blah, and that that provider lost 400 lost $400. He's going to lose $400 every single time that he quotes that price, because he was so desperate to get to yes, he couldn't even get to like like, if you want to undercut me right. Like, if you want to like 750, 700.
Right.
Don't go all the way like, yeah, I'll do that for peanuts. Like, why?
Yeah. You're saying
Yeah.
doing work for free isn't a great way to business?
If you want to be the free guy, then
No.
go ahead and do it for free.
I just have so much broad, wide, and a multitude of examples where people have done stuff for free. I mean, just a local competitor that I'm thinking about. There's like an $8 million property, which is kind of rare here in Greensboro. And one of my competitors wanted it so bad that they stole it from me. A client had already booked it with me, and she was one of my regulars. And she's like, listen, they gave me a free shoot to do this whole thing. And I'd be stupid to say no. Well,
Yeah.
the video was not good, and she ended up hiring me to do it anyway.
Yep.
After they screwed it up. But also, that person was out of business later that year.
Yep. And that's even besides the point, is that and I think that's clout chasing. First of all, like, I understand that photographers want to be known as the ones that shoot the high-end multi-million-dollar listings, but if you're not charging an appropriate price to shoot $8 million listings, like, you're not a champ. You're not winning. You might get a few more likes on social media than me, but at the end of the day, you're losing the long game.
Right.
And the long game is increasing your value over time, right?
Yes.
It's so I think what you're doing is important. This podcast is important, because, as I said, in the photography groups, in the video groups, there's a lot of negativity trying to bring other people down, and there's downward pressure on prices in these groups.
It's not just prices; it's overall morale, respect. I think it's an kind of an addition. I don't know how to word this, but it's how would you say this? It's related to what's happening in the broader world, and we're seeing a little bit just people being incredibly harassing, but also we have a lot of moderators in the Facebook groups who are too cowardly to call it out and drop the hammer where they need to, because they allow it to continue. By the way, if you guys want a better Facebook group, just check out the business side of real estate photography. I run the whole thing. It's not as active as it could be, but you guys could be there. Yeah. All right, last question here.
I want to bring up one point. As a matter of fact, this is kind of like my whole theme song, right? Mm-hmm. And it's something I've hosted a few workshops, and I often open with this. Maybe you want to open this with your podcast, but do you know what the most expensive real estate video ever made is?
I don't. Okay. I imagine it's probably. Well, go ahead and
Yeah. So it was for a building in New York called 432 Park Avenue.
Wait, is this the
Uh,
Sarah Hunt?
I think he had a listing in there at some point, but this is a
Yeah.
building that launched in 2013, right?
Okay.
So in 2013, the developer wanted to do a video. Guess how much that video cost to produce?
Phew. I would love to see the video first. I guess I'm going to go with 500,000 just because it's the most expensive one ever made.
Close, close. It was actually a full $1 million to
Oh, wow.
produce. Yeah.
Okay.
So before, and I'm big into history. This is a very young industry that we're in, right?
Mhm.
But way back in 2013, a developer wanted to make a video for his property, and he spent $1 million on it. I haven't seen it. As a matter of fact, most people haven't seen it, and the reason is because they only play it in their private sales center for people who are actually going to potentially buy a condo in that building, right?
Right.
And this kind of goes against everything that we've learned during the social media, decade that we're a part of, is that it's not about how many likes or how many shares you get. It's actually the opposite of that. Is how exclusive are you? How targeted are you, right? And to show a video to a private select group of potential buyers, to me, kind of like encapsulates where we were as an industry and where we've gone, right?
Mhm.
We've gone from, it wasn't crazy to imagine a $500,000 $1 million video production for a condo building, to now we have people doing it for like $1,500, right?
And
Because, yeah.
how do we get out of this, man? How do we get out of this spiral that we put ourselves in as an industry? And would you like to talk about how this has happened? Like, how's it happened? And I know you're running out of time here, but
Mhm.
how's it happened, and what can we do to turn this franchise around? Because the pressure is only building. We've got AI coming in. We've got large companies like Zillow encroaching on what I would call our territory.
Mhm.
And there's some of us who are trying to do something about that. If you guys want to fight all these people, check out realestatemediahero.com and sign up. I'll give you a personal phone call after you do that. But what do we need to do as creatives to turn this around? And
Mhm.
why are we in this? Like, what's primarily to blame? I'm not going to say who, but what?
Yeah, no, so partly it's supply and demand, and that can't be changed, right? It's way easier to get access to professional video production equipment. Drones editing is way more available now too. So excluding that part of the equation, the supply and demand, there's still a huge opportunity for content creators, people operating in real estate video, to sell on their value. And the way you sell on your value is you're going to first understand who you're selling to and what the whole opportunity is for that person. What's at stake, right?
Mhm.
When there's a lot at stake, people spend a lot more money, right? And you recognize that you're used to selling to realtors who don't have a lot at stake in the transaction. Their commission is 2% of that transaction. Find who the stakeholders are. Find out what's the total dollar amount at stake, because they need your images to sell these properties. It's a need, right?
Mm.
And they don't need the cheapest. Brokers need the cheapest because they're broke, right? That has a lot of value to a broker, and that's fine. I'm not going to convince you that you should charge more money to broke people. That's not my message, right? My message is to focus on finding the opportunities and where you have the opportunity to make a lot of money. That's what I'm saying. And to your point, I know you're interested primarily in the real estate, photography community. Is that, look at your peers in the industry. Look at the inspectors, the property inspectors, the title companies, the attorneys, the agents, the loan officers. Like, they have a price that they work at, right? And they have enough dignity to know that they're not going to give away a free, title insurance just to earn someone's business. It doesn't happen in that industry, right? It doesn't happen. So stop chasing clout and trying to get, try to become popular in this industry doing, social media tactics and tricks. Because if you're not, you could be selling, like it doesn't help you to be shooting multi-million-dollar properties for $350, like one competitor does in my market, goes around with iPhones and shoots multi-million-dollar properties for $350. You're hurting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Forget the rest, even the rest of the industry. You're just hurting yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
So
So
I tell you, man, it's like I couldn't be more in agreement with you. It's incredible. I think this podcast has got to be the most valuable content per minute than we've had so far.
I
It's like,
appreciate that.
yeah, such an incredible wealth of knowledge. And by the way, guys, if you guys are out there and you're trying to learn real estate photography, and you're not sure to even recognize what an authentic, true, credible resource is or what it looks like, here he is, Stephen Caban.
Thank you.
And you've
Appreciate that.
mentioned that you do mentoring. You've mentioned that people can call you for consulting. What's the best way for people to reach out to you in order to do that?
Yeah, shoot me an email, Instagram, Facebook helps. My email is steven@fullbarsmedia.com.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking for more people to collaborate with because, I've decided that I'm not going to necessarily build up a big employee base. I'm kind of past that. I just want to collaborate with people who do really good work. So, if you feel like your capacity to do high-end creative work kind of exceeds the amount of opportunities you have, or maybe you have opportunities and you don't know how to close them, we can do a collaboration. And I'm doing that very frequently actually now. Is videographers are reaching out to me saying like, hey, I'm working with this developer, this company, and I really think I can sell them on something big. And we attack it together and we split the proceeds. So, the goal is to get, this only applies to guys who want to do high-end stuff and girls. There's girls doing some high-end stuff too. You have to want it first. And you have to have a vision for where your company is and what your portfolio is going to look like and what kind of impact you're going to have on the industry. So reach out. Jonathan, you have a great podcast. Thanks for having me on. We always have lively conversations on the Facebook group. So I'll see you there.
Honestly, you see me a lot less in the Facebook group just because I've gotten so sick of the negativity in there. It doesn't do me any good, and I don't think it does most anyone else any good. I've blocked a lot of people, but I still can't. I think it's really almost too bad to save. And sadly, the moderators, like I've said, they don't.
Well, here's the dynamic is this.
Mhm.
I think photographers were all very introverted people. I was introverted for a long time. We don't like people telling us what to do, right?
Mhm.
So they like to hear stories. They like to hear stories and be the voyeur and observe and learn that way. So it's very hard to approach a photographer and talk about their business and imply that they're doing anything wrong, because we all have that ego problem, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think the way to address that is with positivity and encouraging each other to like get better, charge higher prices. I mean, if we can keep that energy going, then I think the only direction is up.
All right. And I'll put all the links in the description, including my Facebook group and a way to reach out to you as well. So thank you very much. And I'll see you guys on the next podcast.
Perfect. Cheers.